Today's episode of Vaguely Scientific is brought to you by Zeno's Cheese Strings, the only cheese string that you can rip in half endlessly for infinite cheese. Order now and you'll also receive a free box of Banach Tartskis. Today I saw some green apples for sale, which consequently increased the likelihood that I am Derek.
Oh.
At no instant is Jim engaged in scientific activity, and since time consists of durationless instants, Jim is never a scientist. Hi, Jim.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. That one's the arrow paradox.
Oh.
Yeah. Our guest this week is Allie, therefore, if we have any more guests, all of our guests will be Allie. Hello, Allie.
Hello. Happy to be here with my many multitudes of self.
This is the show where listeners send in questions and receive vaguely scientific answers that approach correctness asymptotically, blur into truth by degrees, and persist despite constant revision. In fact, we've proven that time is an illusion. But paradoxically, it's now time for the fun science fact of the day.
Wow. Well, all right then. This is going to sound so much less sophisticated because this is the potato radius. And the potato radius is the size at which celestial bodies are big enough that the gravity can crush it into a ball. If the object is smaller than that, then it is a lumpy potato-shaped asteroid.
Big enough that gravity can crush it into a ball. Okay. So that's how planets are spheres. Is that what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can moons be weird? Moons can be weird shaped. I don't know why I said that. Moons can be all kinds of shapes.
Moons can be any shape they want.
I've never met a moon I didn't like.
But planets?
I've never met a moon.
Planets gotta be round.
Okay. Well, before we get into the questions this episode, we do have some stuff we got wrong, and I actually bothered to look it up later. So in episode 192, Time for Waterworld again.
Oh no.
I was talking about the myth about the guy who turns into a cicada because he is immortal but lacks eternal youth, and I couldn't remember his name. I was correct that it was from Greek mythology, but the cicada guy in question was not actually a god. We actually talked about this myth in episode 61, The Shield of Perpetual Shielding. It was the mortal prince Tithonus, who was granted immortality by Zeus at Eos's request because she was in love with him. However, Eos forgot to ask Zeus to grant him eternal youth as well, so he continued to age, eventually shriveling up to the wrinkly form of an insect we know as a cicada. His chirping was said to be his eternal lament for lost youth and mortality. The myth is told as sort of a fable to warn against careless desire and, I guess, not thinking about the consequences of getting what you want in the moment.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Speaking of things in the moment, kind of works. I don't know. Let's move on to our first question.
Sounds good.
Question 1 this week is, if a tree falls in a forest and nobody is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Scientifically speaking. I think scientifically speaking is interesting to add there, and so just some background on this. The earliest known version of this question that we can trace appears in 1883 from philosophers Charles Sanders Peirce and Joseph Jastrow, and it was originally written, if a tree were to fall upon an island where there were no human beings, would there be any sound? This has been referenced in 1890 by philosopher William James in The Principles of Psychology, so vaguely from the late 1800s, and it was originally meant not as like the Zen campfire riddle that I think we all think of it as, but nor was it actually meant to explore physics. The original intent was it was a philosophical question about whether reality exists independently of perception.
Oh, okay. I think that makes a lot of sense because I actually really like this question because it added that little scientifically speaking, right? How we understand things from the point of view of science. But I also think it's really interesting to talk about from a psychological or socio perspective as well, right? If there is no evidence that it made a sound, does it matter if it made a sound or not?
And does it count as having happened?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I broke this down into two kind of answers. The short answer that is boring, which is yes. And then the long answer, which is also yes, but more, right?
But in a more interesting way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I wanted to ask you guys, are we viewing this question, obviously from a scientific lens, but from a human-centric lens? Does the ears that perceive it have to be human? Or can it be anything reacting to it?
I have both. I have both things.
Excellent.
Because, so I was trying to define sound, right? And the definition of sound, it's hard to pinpoint the specific scientific definition of sound. At least I was having trouble doing it. So feel free to correct me. But everything that I was finding always kind of added the caveat that is audible. And that's like a really important distinction to me. So the easiest thing I got were two definitions. Sound is a phenomenon in which pressure disturbances propagate through a transmission medium, such as the air. In the context of physics, it is characterized as a mechanical wave of pressure or related quantities, whereas in physiological, psychological contexts, it refers to the reception of such waves and their perception by the brain. So those are two very different definitions.
Yeah. Well, they kind of go together though, right?
Yeah.
Because there is the action, which is the compression wave, that is the result of what we interpret as sound, right? And what a lot of living things would interpret as sound or pressure, right? There are some insects that don't have ears, but they are highly sensitive. Like usually they have hairs or antenna that are highly sensitive to changes in pressure. And so an air pressure wave they would detect, perhaps not as sound. I don't know. I'm not an insect guy, but I think it would detect it in some way, right? So is it hearing sound? No, but it is detecting that change in pressure.
I thought you were going to end that with "I'm not an insect," and I was like, that would have made sense too.
Yeah.
Listen, that would be a lie.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to lie on this show.
Yeah, I don't want to lie on the internet. People don't lie on the internet, Derek.
Never. I think it's interesting to think about the number of different types of sounds that do occur when there are no direct observations being made.
Okay.
And that was sort of the first thing I was thinking of, is just when there's a sound and nobody sees where or what the sound was caused by, but obviously the sound still happens. And then maybe later on you go and investigate and you see, all these boxes in my basement fell over. So I guess now I got to clean all this mess up.
Yeah.
But
almost the opposite of the question a little bit.
Yeah. But so what you're getting at something that I looked at, which is kind of like forensic investigation a little bit. I was trying to take that approach to it. So working backwards, because we have studied nature and we have studied physics and we have an instinctual knowledge of if something has happened, it must have had a cause. So if you go into a forest and you see a tree uprooted and fallen on the ground, logically, you're going to probably figure that tree started upright. It is possible for a tree to grow sideways, but you could probably see clear signs that a tree had fallen down. So then you would likely then be able to say, okay, if that tree fell down, it fell through the air, creating the creaking and the crashing noise. And so that's your logical conclusion. And I was kind of thinking, if no one's there, could you do an investigation to find evidence that sound had been produced, such as like sound waves? And this got really murky because theoretically you could find something that had resonated in other objects nearby and slight movements of other things like shock waves, I suppose.
Yeah.
But this would be like nigh impossible to actually verify that, like to have a deduction that this is because of sound, because a tree falling can easily have physically hit other objects, and wind could have easily moved things. And so with the human brain, I feel like this is a stretch.
Mm.
But that led me to a point that Allie, you kind of alluded to. I always kind of considered if a human being has ears and is present, that's them hearing it. If an animal is present, that's them hearing it. And I also kind of always felt like if you left a tape recorder running, that's still technically somebody hearing it. I'll come back to that in a second, because I was thinking, how could you find tangible evidence, or I guess more concrete evidence, of sound waves? And I thought, okay, well, what about something that vibrates for a longer time, like guitar strings or a tuning fork or something? What if we concocted some chain of tuning forks that would carry the sound far enough away that you are sitting at the end of this chain and you don't actually hear the tree crash, but you hear the evidence of it when those tuning fork vibrations ultimately get to you. And that all fell apart when I was like, isn't that essentially just recording it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
that's where I was stuck.
I really like that, but I think we can also expand it. Like, I mean, trees don't have a central nervous system. Plants and the things surrounding it don't have a central nervous system that I understand, at least.
Sure.
But they also bear witness to the impact of a sound wave. It might move their leaves a little bit. It might upset their roots when the tree hits the ground, right? And I think that, like, does that count for something in this? Because they're not hearing it, but sound is still... we would perceive it as sound.
Yeah, I think so, because, I mean, when you get right down to it, as we've been saying, you know, sound is just a pressure wave that we just happen to have the right kind of receptors to comprehend. And so, you know, if a tree creates a pressure wave and that pressure wave pushes on other things nearby, I think that still absolutely counts, even if they don't have the receptors for that. Yeah. It's because sound really isn't anything special. It's just a shock wave. So
yeah. And we just have this weird inner ear mechanism that interprets it and sends an electric signal to our brain to tell us what it means. Yeah. And that changes depending on what kind of, you know, inner workings you have in your ear too. Sound sounds different to different animals, and it sounds different in different mediums. It sounds different in water. And it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's different for different creatures. I don't know. Yeah. Different sounds for different creatures.
Different sounds for different creatures. I largely agree with all of this, especially, like, Allie, you summed it up. The short answer, yes. The long answer, yes. I agree with that, but I did find it interesting that the question was originally posed as philosophical based on the nature of reality and perception.
Yeah.
Because that one definition of sound being defined psychologically as your interpretation of those sound waves, that would make it that degree of separation where that now becomes the qualia of, like, can you actually prove that another person is hearing it? So the physics, I think, is basically provably true, that sound waves are produced. But if no one's around to hear it, does it translate to that kind of sound? And that is interesting to me because it makes this a philosophically hard question in that regard.
Can I counter with something a little dumb? And feel free to cut this.
Go for it.
Not even counter. I actually am agreeing with you in this. Okay. I don't know why I said counter. There is, I can't remember. I feel like it was Horizon Zero Dawn that did this for video games, right? Where if you are not looking in a direction in the world, it no longer exists in the game to save the computing power.
Yes.
Power, right?
Oh, yeah, because it wouldn't render.
Yes, so they just don't render the stuff that's outside of your view, and the second your character moves, they then render the stuff that would be there, right? Yeah. And it made it easier for some systems to run this huge open world, was to just have some of it not exist if you couldn't see it. My thinking in this a little bit is that our eyes are also interpreting light waves that are around us in the same way that our ears are interpreting these compression waves that are around us.
Yeah.
And I think that if we say that because we cannot see something, it does not have color or shape or form, then I think that breaks down that psychology a little bit because, well, someone else could be looking at it, right? And then it does. So it's, but I also love this idea of the psychology of it. I'm so twisted up in my brain because there's the anthropology, like, oh yes, how people interpret the world and our physical versus like the fact that we're, an electrified, haunted piece of meat inside of our skull. And then like how we're like, well, I didn't see it happen. I didn't hear it happen. Did it actually make a sound? And what did it sound like? I can't know unless I was there. And I also love your interpretation of having a recording. I wonder if there would be a case for like clay or mud in the soil that would cause a stick to move and indicate that it had swayed because of that impact or sound.
No, I think the evidence exists. The issue is being able to interpret the evidence with our human brains, right? Because there's so many other factors. Like I think I've said before, and other physicists have said, if you could perfectly calculate all physics, there's no such thing as a random coin flip. But we do not have the ability to calculate that. So, and I also want to stress, I was an English major. So this is not meant to be taken like a scientific counter to the physics argument at all. I inherently know this is a go nowhere point to make, but I think it's fascinating because it reminds me of a similar philosophical question. Does the moon exist when no one is looking at it? And that really, the only real reason I want to bring that up at all is because I would argue, yes, of course it does, because we have the concept of object permanence. But what's really interesting is, despite the fact you can find heaps and heaps of evidence to prove, yes, the moon still exists beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt, you can never actually prove that if literally no one else is looking at the moon.
Yeah.
So is that a useful thing to say? No. But
yeah. Well, it's got me thinking. I'll give you that.
Okay. Well, that's what philosophy is all about, right?
Yeah. It's got my brain hurting a little bit. And I need that to interpret sound.
Oh,
it's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
I think one of the fun things about this question is that it is, at its root, really just a philosophical question, because intuitively, like we've said, of course it makes some kind of pressure wave. Yes. But is that pressure wave being interpreted by anyone? And if not, then, does that count as a sound?
Yeah. And I mean, we summed it up with short answer is yes, because the physics of sound is what it is. And I also think that it's really interesting because the first time I ever heard this question was in The Simpsons.
Oh, okay.
And it was Lisa asking Bart if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make sound? And Bart goes, of course it does. It sounds like, and then she asks the other question, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Which he has a similar snarky retort to, where he just like hits his fingers against his palm on one hand. But in my head, that made those two questions kind of combined. So the sound of one hand clapping is a meditative Zen question. And it is meant to not have an answer, and it is meant to just make you think. Whereas I feel like does a tree make a sound is less abstract to some degree.
Yeah, I agree, actually.
Yeah.
Because I had always, I know that clip as well, and I have a friend that can, like, loose the muscles in his hand so he can, like, flip his hand back and forth really fast, and it claps. I cannot do it, and it's a little scary. But that was always the answer of like, oh yeah, what's one hand clapping sound like? But then if you take away that context, it's like, oh yeah, like it's just your hand in the air, and it does make a sound, but it's a sound we can't perceive because it's moving the air particles. You're giving me some real thinkers tonight.
Yeah. Well,
Does the moon exist? I can't see it right now.
I can't see it. I can't see outside right now where I'm sitting. So
Oh, yeah.
Is outside there?
Is outside there?
Might
I don't
not be.
know.
Is
I don't
there
even
air?
know.
You don't know.
I don't know if
I'm
either
not
of you
here.
are more than a voice.
I told you I'm a bug.
You're a bug.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jim's a scientist or
Yeah.
not a
Mhm.
scientist, depending on if we give credence to Zeno's paradox.
Yeah.
What's really fun about this also is that it reminded me of the fact that it has been proven that the universe is not locally real. And
Yeah.
I had to look
What?
up because I had to remind myself what that meant because
Please help me. I'm scared.
I'm afraid now.
So real in the scientific term that they are defining it as basically means that objects have properties whether you are observing them or not. And one of the things that is true of the quantum realm is that particles typically don't have properties until they are directly observed, which is really interesting because typically we are not directly observing particles like ever. So, and then local is the idea that objects nearby can only be influenced by objects that are also nearby, and also you cannot violate the speed of light.
Right.
So, what we have figured out is that objects do not have properties immediately unless they are being observed, which means they are not technically real until they are observed. But the bottom line is that what this means is it doesn't mean that nothing is real.
Right.
Right.
What it means is that particles themselves don't have a defined set of properties until they are directly observed. And it's a really important experiment. It's a really important idea in quantum physics because a lot of the sort of underpinnings of how light behaves and how electrons behave kind of rely on this idea that they don't have properties until you observe them. And so one of the really big famous experiments that proved part of this at the time, back about 100 years ago, was what's called the double slit experiment.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what this is that you are firing a beam of electrons at these two very narrow slits. And you would expect that if it's a beam, that when the electrons go through to the plate on the back, they would just make two lines on the wall as if they were, going straight through like a flashlight shines a straight light through that. And what they found is that it actually creates several lines that look a lot like a barcode. And the reason it does this is because electrons are behaving like a wave in this instance. And so when they go through the two slits, they create interference patterns like two waves crashing together and making ripples. And this is how they figured out, even though electrons are supposed to be a particle, they also act like a wave. So they don't have the same types of properties that we see of things like a rock. If you did this experiment with a bunch of sand and threw it at these holes in the wall, you would get two straight lines of sand stuck to the fly paper that you've glued to the wall or whatever.
Yeah.
So, on the macro scale, obviously the tree is making a sound, but on the micro scale, on the quantum scale, are these electrons behaving the way that they should if we, are not observing them? So
I love that it turned into quantum physics. I remember seeing an article that said, I don't remember if it said scientists prove or scientists theorize or whatever it was, but the point of the headline of the article was the universe is not real. Science says the universe is not real. And I remember, and still to this day, kind of think that headline was particularly clickbaity. But I remember that what ensued from that article was a bunch of comments from people who clearly read nothing past the headline.
Yeah. Because, this scientist here won a Nobel Prize for it. So, clearly something actually important being done here.
Yeah.
But, yeah, a lot of the headlines that I found when I was trying to find information about this for this episode were very clickbait.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that real is not defined as like, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, they should have picked a different word, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a big problem in science because different things mean different things.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, did you know that the government is using secret devices on planes and jets to spray poison on the U.S. population every day?
No, I didn't know that because it's not true. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about today's conspiracy theory of the week.
Chemtrails. Gotcha. All right, fine. Go ahead.
Well, you've probably seen it before. There are stripes of clouds that appear in the sky behind a passing jet and linger there. Don't try to tell me those are natural cloud formations.
I wasn't going to.
Another thing you might say is that these are something called a condensation trail, which is a cloud of ice crystals formed behind an aircraft when hot, humid engine exhaust mixes with the extremely cold, low-pressure air at high altitudes.
Well, now that is a thing that does happen. It's similar to seeing your warm breath turning into fog or mist on a cold day.
Yes, but those trails dissipate relatively quickly. Breathing warm air out of your mouth doesn't create a lasting cloud, whereas you can see the trail of clouds behind a jet plane for a very long time.
So what are you suggesting?
Clearly, there's something else in those clouds. Something that interacts with solar radiation, or cloud-seeding weather manipulation, or even psychedelic hallucinogens and birth control drugs. And if you look at the Wikipedia article about this, it straight up just tells you it's false. This is a clear ploy by the shadow organization that runs Wikipedia to prevent us from even discussing this openly.
Well, do you have any evidence that this is true?
Jim, okay?
You want to discuss it? Let's discuss it.
We have clear film footage of several aircraft with visible nozzles turning dispersions on and off.
Why would they be spraying chemicals in the air?
Scientists claim that they need to do it to reflect and disperse radiation from the sun to protect us, with air quotes. Right? Protect us with toxic particles in the atmosphere? What they don't want you to know is that they are using these particles to control weather and affect droughts in other parts of the world with whom we are at war.
Okay, wow. So, it is important to state that the first question you should generally ask when looking at a potential conspiracy theory is who stands to gain. And all of that seems to actually give a possible motive for doing something like this.
Aha!
But possible is not the same as plausible. That technology maybe could exist, and the scientific community would be incentivized to reduce global warming, and there certainly have been historical accounts of using weather manipulation in warfare, but just because something could be true doesn't mean that there is evidence that it is.
You just said the same thing twice.
Hey, I'm just reading what you wrote.
Fair point.
This whole argument seems to be in opposition to the explanation given that these trails are water vapor, except there is evidence that condensation creates clouds of fog in the air, and we see it all the time. Cold air can hold less moisture than warm air. If you take highly saturated warm air, like you might find in your lungs or the exhaust of a car engine, and introduce it into cold air, the extra water vapor in the air will leave the air rapidly as it cools. Depending on how saturated the cold air is, the condensation may be visible for more or less time. If the air is extremely cold, then those little water droplets might immediately turn into microscopic ice crystals, which would linger in the air for much longer.
That's just how clouds form, Jim.
Yes, it's pretty much exactly how clouds form, and the introduction of human technology doesn't change that. Jet engines are powered by combustion reactions, which happen at a high altitude, where the air is very, very cold. So we should and would expect to see them make clouds. I'm not sure why some people would insist that there must be an alternative explanation to something that we expect to see happening.
Well, what about all the film footage I mentioned of planes spraying chemicals?
Like I said, that technology does exist. It's a matter of public knowledge, but there is no evidence that the technology is being used for the purposes that this conspiracy theory purports. In fact, there specifically is evidence that these contrails are not that.
Evidence. Okay, you keep using that word.
Yes, evidence is objective data, facts, or observations collected through systematic methods, like experimentation, that support or challenge a hypothesis or theory, helping to establish truth through repeatable, verifiable findings.
Oh, is that what that means?
So, it's important to analyze the evidence both supporting and refuting a claim. Just because something could be true doesn't mean that it is, and I haven't seen any substantial evidence refuting the simple explanation that contrails are most likely just that, trails of condensation.
Oh, is that what that means?
Yep. So, should we move on to our next question?
Yeah, I guess so. Question 2 this week is: why do we care if other people like the same kind of food, music, or TV shows as we do?
Because they're all wrong and I'm right.
Because everybody needs to know.
Yeah, it's true.
That's it.
It's as easy as the first question. I mean,
it really is. I have two major points. I feel like Allie may be more qualified to talk about one of them. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Go for it.
My first point is that human beings typically have a tribal mentality. And this is, most researchers suggest, an evolutionary thing which goes hand in hand with the idea that our major strength as a species comes from our ability to communicate and work together in large numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So we are safer in groups, and this is why we place so much emphasis socially into like fitting in and belonging in social circles. This is also why we don't like being left out or excluded. And so I think this is interesting how this evolutionary survival instinct has developed and adapted kind of into a, I hesitate to use the word strictly, but more social behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of kind of like we fidget because we may have this instinctual fear that if we sit still too long, predators might get us.
Yeah.
The other aspect of this is that humans have a fundamental aversion to cognitive dissonance. So changing our minds about things is more effort than sticking to what we already know or what we already think we know.
Mm.
This makes us uncomfortable. So whenever something is pointed out that we are wrong, we feel uncomfortable, and our brain tries to get rid of that feeling. And this is why a lot of people's defense mechanism is to double down on incorrect information when presented with evidence to the contrary, because it hurts. It's too much effort for us to have to reroute our brain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue this is a flaw, but it is a very natural flaw that pretty much everybody experiences. And what's interesting about that is when we are presented with something as mundane as my favorite Power Ranger is the Black Ranger, and somebody else says my favorite Power Ranger is the Green Ranger, we are now presented with a marginally different perspective that our brain now has to figure out.
Mm.
And that's just work. That's work for us. And so going back, this is entirely my opinion, but I do think that while that work is harder for us, it is a positive quality in people who do that work to try to expand, I suppose.
Absolutely. And you know that one of the things that I love to say, and I tell my students this as well, is that it's one of my favorite things to tell someone I don't know the answer to something.
Yeah.
Because I think it opens us up to so much more common understanding together, because now we get to do the fun thing, which is, let's figure it out, right? And I think to your first point, there is a lot to be said about us as social creatures, and that we want to be in the quote unquote in group.
Yeah.
Even if that in group is a smaller group, right? We can say that, oh yeah, there's like the jocks, and there's the theater kids, and there's the choir kids, and the band kids, and like the typical high school like separation of whatever. But like, once you kind of get out of that forced, I don't know, closeness with people,
right,
you realize that like most of the people around you are just trying to figure out their day to day and make it work.
Yeah.
And like there's so much more that we are all like on the same playing field about. And I think that's what makes things like food preference, music preference, art preference kind of important into what makes us individuals. And it's not something that should be like, well, Jim doesn't like sushi, so I hate Jim. Like, no, like,
right.
That's not true. It's just
that's
that
not why I hate Jim.
Yeah,
I'm
nice.
kidding. I don't hate Jim.
That's not nice. And like Jim, we've had this conversation so many times, I think, where you're like, I want to, right?
Yeah,
you try like on a yearly
every
basis,
time I go.
you try sushi, and you're just like, nah, it's not for me. And part of me is always like, man, I want you to also enjoy this thing that I love.
Yeah.
But there's no moral failing on either of our sides on that.
Right.
I think we put a moral worth on liking the same thing sometimes. And that's just not true. Like, it is so okay for the most popular game. So this happens so much with Claire Obscure winning all the awards this year with the games. And people being like, I hated it. It wasn't for me. And I'm like, that's okay.
Sure, that's fine.
Like, it doesn't have to be for you.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. I loved it. That's also okay. Like, we don't have to agree on that. If you thought Blueprints deserved to win, that's great. Good for you. I thought Blueprints was a good game too, but I'm getting off track.
Sure.
We're not here to talk about the game of the year.
Sure, that's
this year.
Well, but that touches on kind of an aspect of this that I find interesting, and it's a point of frustration for me often in my life, where I will meet somebody who they like a thing a specific way, and I like a thing a different way, and it bothers them that I don't do it their way. And I'm sure probably when I was younger, I had that tendency as well. I probably still do, and I'm just not thinking of specific examples at the moment. But you bring up video games, which I think is a good reference for this point. I'm the type of person that does not like to play difficult video games. Because I don't play a lot of video games, and when I do, it's to relax, and I'm kind of more interested in just enjoying a casual, easy, story-based experience.
Absolutely.
And so I always advocate, I wish there was an easy setting in a lot of games, and then people have the reaction of, oh, you should just get better at it. And I'm like, well, I don't actually place any value on my ability to beat a difficult video game. And I genuinely feel like options are better. So like, why, just because you like to play it a certain way, why limit another person's ability to do something the way they want to do it?
Yeah. I think that's one of those things where it's not just even about like enjoying certain things in slightly different ways. It's just about like enjoying things that other people don't like. And I don't know, I as you know, for better or for worse, usually for worse, I suppose, I like General Hospital.
Sure.
And it's not good, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to somebody else, but like, I get a kick out of it. But I don't know, like, the weird part of it is that like, because it's bad, I feel like it's almost okay to like it, because a lot of times people get into really, weird headspaces about things that are good. Well, I mean, say like Claire Obscure and Blueprints. It's like, these are two very good things that both deserve praise. And because some people like it, like one of them more than the other, there's kind of a lot of animosity about it. Whereas I'm liking this garbage media, and so no one's fighting me about it.
One time I wrote a series of like a few paragraph long reviews of all of the MCU movies. Just for fun.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I did this whole experiment where I was like, I'm not going to go back and rewatch any of these movies. I'm just going to write based on how I remember them. And that was like made very clear that I'm probably going to get stuff wrong, and it's just what I remember. And I kind of don't want to say which movie it was, because I'll leave that ambiguous. But one of them I particularly didn't like. And I wrote why I didn't like it, and I was like, these are all my opinions. You're welcome to have different opinions. And people kept saying that movie was fantastic, and you're just wrong. You're just objectively wrong. And I was like, my argument was the movie was stupid. It had several plot points that didn't work. And I remember somebody was just like, this is just the incorrect opinion. It's you're awful for not liking this movie. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was fairly hostile. And
there's that moral pin in it again.
And I remember my response, which was not intended to be condescending. It may have come across as condescending, but my response was, it's cool if you like this movie. I like tons of bad movies.
Yeah.
Like, and that was, I meant to be genuinely true. Like, I do like a lot of movies that don't hold up to harsh scrutiny, but I enjoy them.
Yeah. I think there's also an element to this of, we talked a little bit about the social aspect and wanting to be in an in-group, but I also think that our brains are so hardwired to look for threat.
Yeah.
And in the common era, there's not a ton of actual threat to be perceived. So our brains work really hard at finding it where it might not even exist, right? So we see this person that's like, oh, I really like this thing. And you're internally like, well, I don't like that thing. This person must be like, my enemy.
This person's wrong.
And it's like, no. Yeah, they're wrong. They're going to be, they're going to hate me. And then all these other things in your brain, you may not even think this like outright, right? Our brains are doing this behind the scenes of like, ooh, that was, in The Sims, I'm talking video games.
That's fine. Go for it.
When like two Sims have an interaction and you get like a little like negative sign above their head.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's happening in our brains, right? Without us even really contending it, where it's just like, ooh, bad chemical. We're going to throw a bad chemical because we didn't like that. We're going to throw a good chemical because we did like that. And all of that is making these brain pathways of like, did that land positively? Did it land negatively? And now how do we perceive this person after that interaction? And most of the time, I think we are conscious beings that are not just chemicals, that are not just these reactions that our brain makes. So we can counter ourselves, right? And if you're mindful and you're in your own head and you can be like, why did I feel so upset that this person didn't like my favorite movie? It doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, maybe they have a movie that I might really enjoy, but I've never seen before. Or maybe we can talk about it and they can see this through a new perspective. And it's one of the things that I love to do with people is to be like, all right, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite dinosaur? What's your favorite movie? And then tell me why. Like, what about these things do you love? And I think it's so important for us to see things in the world, not just from our own, like, oh, I didn't really like that thing, or I really did like that thing. But it's really important to this person, but why?
Yeah.
And then find that why. And that's the social interaction. That's the, the double positive sim interaction that we can get with each other.
Right.
And so much of our brain is that chemical reaction that we have to almost force our way out of it sometimes. Again, this is a little kind of like personal experience, so it may or may not mean much, but I was adjusting some of my antidepressant medications for a while, and it made me hate listening to music.
Interesting.
Like, didn't want to listen to any music. I would drive at the hour to work in complete silence. And it didn't bother me. It was just kind of like, I had no desire to listen to music. And now that it's adjusted and I'm feeling better, I now have a playlist that is called Please Remember We Like Music. Please, we love music. We love singing. Please remember. Yeah. And it's like, I have to be like, oh yeah, I love listening to musicals in the car. And like, you have to almost override the chemistry of your brain a little bit to get past that, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would be remiss if I don't point out that there are certainly people out there that have a kind of need to, if you like something that they don't, put you down because of it. And I rail against that, but I have plenty of friends. Let's in the immediate company. Jim loves Gundam. I'm not a huge fan of Gundam, but that's fine. Like,
enemies,
right?
No,
right. But at no point am I gonna be like, Jim, Gundam's stupid, and you're stupid for liking it. Like, that's silly to me. I am a massive fan, which people who listen to the show regularly will know because I gush about it all the time. I'm a massive fan of Superman as a character. Superman is not a particularly popular character among laymen, I suppose. And there are a lot of people that don't like that I like Superman, and I just don't understand it. I'm not offended. I just don't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that it's one of those things where it really helps to be able to look at something objectively, because I think when you can look at something objectively, then it makes it easier for you to be able to embrace something. I'm trying to figure out how to explain this, but basically what I'm thinking of, like, if you look at Superman and you can see all the good things about it, and you can also see the flaws in Superman, or you can look at Gundam and you see the good things and the flaws about it, then I don't know. I feel like it makes you able to be more comfortable when somebody comes at you with like their opinion.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I know that there are some weird things about comics, or I know there's some weird things about giant robot anime, but I just kind of like them and they're fun and I enjoy them for what they are.
But I had an interaction with somebody one time where I was getting together a group of people to play a game that I enjoy. And one person would continue to not want to play this game, but wouldn't directly tell me that they don't want to play this game. And when I finally confronted it, I say, hey, it's cool if you don't want to do this. They were like, well, I didn't want you to think that because I don't like this game, I didn't want you to think I didn't like you. And my reaction to that was, I don't think that, but I am sad that I understand exactly why you would think that. Because plenty of people would expect, oh, you don't like me because you don't like the thing that I like. And, oh well.
Yeah. I think with our brains as well, as we are developing, right, as we are young and we're experiencing new things and we are constantly in this state of, ooh, this is new, let's log this memory. Ooh, this is new, let's log this memory. And finding out what it is we like, what it is we dislike, what is in our culture, what are we exposed to. It sets a lot of our persona and our understanding of the world into place. But as we get older, it is harder for us to make those connections.
Yeah.
But not impossible. I find that so many people also say like, oh, like it gets hard to learn a language after your 20s. And it's like, yeah, it does. It gets harder. It's not impossible.
Yeah.
You can do it. Like, it just means that you have to put in the extra effort. And that goes the same with interests as well, right?
Yeah.
If you immediately stonewall and say, I don't like this, period, I think that's not fair.
Yeah.
That it's just like, I will not like this, I will never like this. And maybe that's true, right? Maybe you will never like something. But that doesn't mean that when you are encountering it, you have to have a sour attitude or downright, like, derogatory attitude about it, right?
That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can easily go into something, a movie as an example you mentioned, you can easily go into a movie and decide before seeing it, I'm not going to enjoy this. And guess what? You won't.
Right.
Like, you have that control over your brain.
Yeah. I recently went to see a movie and knew from what I had seen about it, what I had heard about it, the reviews that were coming in, that it was a bad movie. And I went in going, I'm going to have an amazing time watching this bad movie.
That's fantastic.
And you know what? I did. It was so awful. And I had a great time.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's the whole thesis of things like Mystery Science Theater 3000 or Rift Tracks is like, these are bad movies, but we're going to go and have fun with them.
Yeah, they can be fun. They don't have to be cinematic masterpieces. Whatever that means. That's such a subjective term.
I think that it's just so much fun to engage with bad media.
Yeah, it absolutely can be. There's one more thing that I wanted to bring up. And I don't know that it directly ties into this question, but I did think of it while kind of thinking about group mentality, tribal mentality. And that is whether this stuff is practical, like pragmatic. Like, obviously we get defensive about things that we have an emotional reaction to. But the reason that I mentioned this survival instinct has become kind of strictly social. Does that mean that it's worth having anymore? Is kind of, I don't have an answer to that. It's kind of where my brain went, getting to etiquette. I think about etiquette a lot because I know a lot of people that are very into etiquette, and I am a nonconformist, anti-establishment person, so I don't like etiquette rules. But I want to throw out some examples of why I don't like specific etiquette rules, and it's if they feel to me like they are arbitrary. It doesn't mean they are arbitrary, but they feel like they are. So, for example, I have two examples of rules from a fairly recent etiquette handbook. It is rude to put your elbows on the table when you are eating with company. I struggle with this because I'm a tall person and a lot of tables are too low for me. And it's just comfortable for me to have my resting arms at that level. The reason this is considered rude is that a long time ago, it was really common, like I believe medieval Europe is where this comes from. It was really common for groups of people to all eat at a slanted table called basically a trough. And you would all be on the same table. And if you were to put your elbows on the table, you would shift the balance and knock everyone's food on them.
Oh.
So that would be a rude thing to do. That is not really a common eating scenario anymore. So is that rule, and this is where I'm like overly pragmatic about it, is that rule worth keeping around? And I argue no, but it does have a reasonable origin. Meanwhile, I read somewhere that if you have company and you are done being social for the day and you would like everyone to leave your house and go home, etiquette teachers will suggest it is rude to ask people to leave, but what you can do instead is dim the lights in the room, suggesting to people that they leave. Now, I think that strikes me as so much more rude than just saying, hey, everybody, it's good to see you. I think I'm going to go to bed. So like, take care. I'll see you next time. Like, you don't have to kick people out, but you can politely say, I am done with the socialness.
Yeah.
I think give them the preschooler, like, hey guys, let's do like a 15 more minutes. And then I really got to start cleaning up and getting things ready for bed. So I appreciate you all, right?
Or just start turning the lights down on them and be like, they'll figure it out.
I also want to introduce to this, though, that is Western etiquette, right?
Yes.
This is different in lots of different places in the world, right? To us, it's rude to eat with your hands. But in so many cultures, that is how you engage socially with eating.
Right. The slurping of noodles, I remember being, because we think that's rude because it makes noise. But in Chinese cuisine, slurping noodles is a sign of good luck. And it is also a sign that you are enjoying the meal.
Yeah. And like the fact that a lot of places around the world, like, you don't add anything to your food. The way you get it is the way it is to be eaten.
Right.
And here in the United States, we're like, what do you want? Ketchup, mayo, salt, pepper, like tartar sauce? What do you want to put on it? We got you.
We give you the basics and do what you want.
Yeah, exactly. I think it very much comes down to, again, that cultural differences are good. Right? It's a good thing that we have cultural differences and that we have different music tastes and that we have all these different feelings about stuff, and so that we can share it with each other. And this one's for you, Dad. We always want to be curious and not judgmental. It's okay not to like something, but be curious about the why.
Yeah. And I think that really kind of feeds into what I said at the very beginning of this tribal mentality. What makes us strong as a species is our ability to communicate and expand our perspectives.
Yes.
So I do think, I didn't think this until you said that, so thank you. I do think that makes the social aspect of this beneficial to the human race.
Yeah.
I agree. We did it. We solved all the strife in the world. I think everyone is now going to be super happy with each other. And there will be no more conflict over at least music and video games for sure.
Yeah.
So listeners, let us know, what's your favorite music, what's your favorite food, and what is your favorite TV show? Because, hey, we might not like them, but we'd like to try.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to tell us about those things, or if you have any thoughts about anything else we said, or anything we didn't say, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com, or you can comment on our blog, you can like us on Facebook, or you can like us on Blue Sky @Vaguely Scientific. Hey, Jim, where do we get all these wacky questions?
Why, we get them from you, the listeners. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and all the other great places that cool podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
And if your friends play the podcast and no one's around to hear it, we still get the metrics.
So true. So
I've
true.
been sitting on that one the whole episode.
Genius.
Incredible. Our vaguely musical intro was composed by Anthony Pizzelli. And don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. It is far too late to get something for anyone for Valentine's Day this year, but maybe try again next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it, give it to them later.
Yeah.
You know.
Next Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Save it.
And hey, Allie, thanks for
Hey.
being our guest this week.
Oh my gosh, thank you guys so much for having me. I got these warm fuzzy wuzzies from us talking about the human psychology. Thanks, guys.
Good.
For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
I'm Allie.
And everything we ever say on this show, including this, is a lie.
Oh, no. Well,
I'm still a bug, though.
toodaloo, I guess. Is that a lie, too?
I opened with the paradoxes. I had to end with a paradox.
Yeah.
I love it.
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. 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 Do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo.
What? I'm back.